There. Oh, hey, hello, guys. How are you? I know I'm a couple minutes late. Ah, when I tell you, I thought I was being a little sassy and a little grown, and I was like, let me put this red lipstick on my face because I know some of y'all gonna call me a Jezebel anyway. So I figured I may as well be a Jezebel. You know what I'm saying? So Jezebel it is. So, anywho's Heimer. I put it on. And then I got a little bit on my fingers. Oh, child. It was a mess. And then I got a little bit everywhere. It was a mess. So I am finally live and I'm here. Hello on Instagram. How are y'all? I finally figured out how I can manage to see my video over there. Oh my God. Hello on Instagram. Hello on X. Hello on YouTube. So, what are we talking about today? We are going to be discussing once again, and just you might as well get used to this for a little while. We are going to be discussing the Daystar uh, saga. And I will catch you all up that don't know anything about the Daystar saga. But we will catch up a little bit today and we're going to go a little bit deeper. I have some more videos and I have some more information. And we are really going to talk about spiritual abuse. We are going to talk about, yeah, right. I came in hot, right? We're going to talk about why, as this whole thing has unfolded, the timeline over the last 4 years. Why does it seem like, and this is something I've seen consistently that the non-denominational charismatic church appears to care more about appearances and things like divorce and whether or not that's biblical, rather than caring about what's happening to our children, our women, our teenagers, what's happening in that arena. And we're very quick to blame, victims in those cases, but you dare not talk against the man and the woman of God because they are the voice of God. Child, there's so much going on here. So I want y'all to buckle up. We're going to play the intro and then we are going to get started. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. I better put my allegedly banner on down here. So, hello, Sister Michelle. How are you? How are you? And thank you for your PayPal last night. I very much appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm glad you were hoping I was going to speak. I could not let this go. Let me tell you guys. So, for those of you that may have missed it, last night, spur of the moment, I just decided, let me get on here and talk about something. I had been kind of looking at the situation that's going on with Bishop T.D. Jakes and Pastor, I think it's Dwayne, is that his name? Youngblood and Dr. Larry Reed, all these, and all the accusations and allegations and lawsuits that are flying along and flying around. And then I happened across all of these videos about Daystar. And I remembered from back in my earlier years, my younger years, what Daystar, was all about. And if you missed last night's conversation, it was entitled TD Jakes Dwayne Youngblood lawsuit. And so you can go back and watch it. It's only an hour, so that's fine to get a little bit of the background. So I'm going to give you a very short synopsis. And the reason why this Daystar situation has been so important, like it's really struck me. Um, and I'm going to give you a little bit of my background so you understand. I grew up, as some of you may know, not all of you, of course, as some of you may know, I grew up strictly learning from the Bible. So when I was younger, like a kid, a child, and teenager, my father did not allow us to go to church, and he didn't because he grew up underneath the pew, and there's a whole host of things that go on as a result of that. So we'll talk about that a whole nother time. Um, because my family on my father's side is actually Baptist church kind of royalty. Because my grandfather on my father's side actually was a composer and a contemporary of Walter Hawkins and the three-part harmony, choral arranging, and things like that. And they were, kind of founding members there of Liberty Baptist Church in Chicago. So kind of royalty, but that's a whole nother story. Anyway, so we grew up, we underneath my mother's, tutelage, and we grew up listening to Kenneth Copeland, Kenneth Hagin, Marilyn Hickey, uh, I don't remember if Joyce Meyer was somebody that I was listening to growing up, or I found her later on. Jimmy Swaggart, we used to watch CBN. So Pat, I can't remember his last name now. Um, all those people coming up, we used to listen to them on the radio, and then when they had their television, half-hour television shows, used to watch them and used to read the Bible straight on. So I grew up in a very non-denominational, charismatic Christian manner. Okay, I grew up believing in the gifts of the Spirit. I grew up believing in the laying on of hands for healing. I grew up believing in speaking in tongues. I grew up in all of that kind of scene. And so then as I got older, then, we had the advent of TBN and Daystar. And so then all of these people and what I didn't know until I was doing some research into Daystar is that Daystar was actually partially funded and founded by a generous donation from Kenneth Copeland. There was a wiki. Let me find that. There was a wiki or some sort of, I was reading something earlier, article. Let me see if it's this one. Because I was trying to find out a little bit about, it was a wiki how or whatnot. Let me share my screen with you and show you what I'm looking at here. So Wikipedia, which, think about it what you will, but I mean, for what it's worth. Let me blow this up even a little bit more so it's easy for you guys to read. The Daystar Television Network, commonly known as Daystar Television or just Daystar, is an American evangelical. So, the non-denominational charismatic Christians are sometimes lumped in together with the evangelicals, okay? Although a lot of the evangelicals won't necessarily want to be lumped in with them, because they will say, especially with the Kenneth Copeland group, they'll talk about the prosperity gospel and all of that, and they feel like it's complete heresy. And I think there's heresy on all sides, but that's a whole nother story for another day. And it's founded by Marcus, owned by the Word of God Fellowship, founded by Marcus Lamb. Daystar headquartered in Dallas, Fort Worth, and in Bedford, Texas. And the network is based on this prosperity theology. Okay. And prosperity theology is a religious belief among some charismatic Christians, charismatic meaning speaking in tongues Christians, that financial blessing and physical well-being are always the will of God for them, and that faith, positive scriptural confession, and giving to charitable religious causes will increase one's material wealth. Okay. We'll talk about that another time. But anyway, this is what I found interesting, that in 1984, Marcus and Joni Lamb moved to Montgomery, Alabama to launch the state's first full-power Christian television station, WCMF-TV. The Lambs built the station for the next 5 years and sold it in 1990. They next moved to Dallas, Texas, where in 1993 they purchased the formerly defunct KMPX. In 1996, with a large contribution from Kenneth Copeland Ministries, the Lambs purchased the station in Colorado, officially turning their television ministry into a network. In August of 1997, the staff moved into a 32,000 square foot facility that included production studios, and Daystar was officially launched on New Year's Eve in 1997. So I just found it interesting that, Kenneth Copeland, we'll come back to that in a bit, but that Kenneth Copeland had a lot to do with Daystar's beginning. I had no idea. So this is all based on that. So Daystar was a, thank you, Sister Michelle. I appreciate that. Daystar was one that showcased, and still does, like the Benny Hinn's. Um, oh my gosh, I cannot remember his name, and I see him. Oh, he's an evangelical minister. Um, evangelical minister Perry Stone. Perry Stone. Do you guys know who Perry Stone is? You may not, but look him up. Perry Stone Ministries was big on Daystar. Big, big. He's a very Hebraic centered Christian minister. Does a lot of prophetic stuff. Has a huge, used to have a huge compound in Tennessee. But TD Jakes has been and still is, to my knowledge, with the Potter's House Ministries, big on there. You had Benny Hinn. So a lot of the TBN folks started to then come over and also broadcast on Daystar. And there were some that broadcast almost exclusively on Daystar at first, and then they migrated over to TBN. But again, this was a lot of the very independent, large scale ministries that were on Daystar. Daystar was the first evangelical like network to go over to Israel, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And there was a big to do because the Israeli government was kind of not happy, or rabbis were not happy that they were kind of creating messianic or fulfill what they call fulfilled Jews. Okay. And in other words, that they then converted and believed that Christ was in fact the Messiah. Now, Sister Michelle says, I remember my daddy loved Reverend Ike. Yes. And Mama loved Robert Tilton. Oh my gosh, I forgot about Robert Tilton. Both me and Mama were heavily exposed in the Catholic Church. Got it. I forgot about Robert Tilton. Oh my God. And Peter Popoff. Do y'all remember Peter Popoff? I can't believe he's still on. All this business in the name of God. Yes. Now, I'm going to make a statement here, and I don't want anyone to take this incorrectly. I do not have an issue with anyone, a minister, anyone being successful, having a nice life, living well, even being what we would call rich as a result of ministry. I don't have a problem with that, because I don't believe that again, in the words of Sadhguru, you do not have to be poor to be pious. You do not have to be poor to be pious. What I have a problem with is when the business of Christianity then turns into you're more in love with the money and you lose your way. And this is Christianity, Judaism, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhism, spirituality, shamanism. You can go on and on. Anytime you're dealing with anything in the spiritual health and the soul well-being, the well-being of someone's soul, and you set out to help people, but then what it ends up happening is this becomes such a business that you love the money more than you love the mission. The money should never be superimposed over the mission. And then also what ends up happening is, because the money, the power, the notoriety, the whatever, you begin to feel that you are actually God. And then this is when we start seeing cult-like behavior. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Is as I was watching, I probably watched another 2 to 3 hours at least of videos. Once we were done, I went and had my dinner, and then I watched a bunch of videos on this whole Daystar thing, because what didn't make sense to me was this timeline. Now, we talked about the timeline with the accusations or allegations surrounding the SA of Jonathan and Suzy Lamb's child. But then that was 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And then why is it just now that he's been fired? Like, what happened? And so I filled in a lot of the blanks, and that's what we want to talk about today. Um, Michelle says, I want people who do their jobs well to get paid just like any other corporate firm. Absolutely. The church itself is a corporate firm, and people get mistreated and terrorized. Yes. And I feel very strongly that not only do people get mistreated and terrorized, but what happens is there is this thing called spiritual abuse, and we are actually going to begin to examine what spiritual abuse is and how it shows up. So the first thing I'm going to do, and all of these videos, by the way, I did put the videos I'm going to show, I did put in the description box below. All right. So what I wanted to do, because we really read this Roy's Report article yesterday, there's more articles. And what I want to do first of all is about a week ago now, Joni Lamb gave a statement as to why she fired her son. Why she fired her boy, her eldest boy, whom her husband, I believe, had already stated that he was going to make his boy the president of Daystar once he passed. But let's just take a peek, shall we? So I'm going to, now this is just a couple minutes here. Nope, that's not the one I wanted. No, I don't. I downloaded. Hang on, gang. For some strange reason. No. All right. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to show it a different way. Okay, let's show it this way. Sorry, gang. I had downloaded it, but for whatever reason, it decided it didn't want to act right. So here we go. Let me make sure I'm sharing my sound. Present. Also share audio. Okay, you guys ready? Here we are. This is Joni Lamb. This is her official statement from about 7 days ago. Let's make sure the volume is up. Let me know if you guys can hear this. It's only 2 minutes long. But I'm gonna have to play it at least a little bit faster, because this lady, they've been going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, child. They have been meddling with people and sending people cease and desist. So I my little channel may not earn that, but here we go.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to take a few minutes today to speak from my heart to the Daystar family and friends. Recently, Daystar made the decision to terminate my son, Jonathan Lamb's employment. That decision was not taken lightly. It followed a 15-month review of Jonathan's performance and his refusal to take any steps to satisfy a detailed performance improvement plan put in.
I want you to understand that this, and you'll see this in the next video, this happens on November 15th or 16th, somewhere in there. It happened on a Saturday. They fired him. Who gets fired on a Saturday? That's kind of like the Friday thing, right? It's like a scene on a Friday, right? How you get fired on your day off. But he did. And this was also in conjunction with, at the same time, that these allegations are now going to be resurfacing about what happened to their then 5-year-old daughter, allegedly. And also, we're also going to find out that this also has a lot to do with the fact that they did not co-sign on Joni Lamb's second marriage, which that's a whole nother situation. So here we go. We're going to talk a little bit more. Okay, gang? I'm going to let it play.
In place. He also refused my offer to participate in a formal mediation to resolve grievances in a biblical and professional manner. Rather than take any steps to improve his performance at Daystar, it seems clear now that Jonathan was focused on fabricating a smear campaign. You see, Jonathan was extremely disappointed that he was not named the future president of Daystar following the death of his father and my husband, Marcus Lamb, despite the fact that Marcus had given a clear directive to the family and to the board that I would succeed him as president. Jonathan's disappointment in not getting his way only deepened when I married Dr. Doug Weiss, who has been such a blessing to me, the rest of my family, and Daystar. I can tell you that as a mother, as a grandmother, the situation saddens me deeply, and it grieves my heart because I love my family. I love all my children. I love my grandchildren. I love the work we've done together for so many years. And I had hoped that we could have resolved the situation in private. But now, Jonathan has given me no choice except to speak out.
I don't know even what to say. Now, if y'all were with me yesterday, now when we get done here, if you weren't with me yesterday, when we get done here, go back and watch. But I don't even know what to say because this woman here, she, in my opinion, this is my opinion, okay, and I'm giving commentary. I'm going to add a little information, my own personal things that have had experiences with the non-denominational charismatic church, how we begin to see that these folks, are operating in a cultish manner, in my opinion, because if you look at a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about today, and you compare that, for instance, to like the Church of Scientology and stuff like that, you're going to find a lot of parallels. If you take what we're going to be talking about today and you butt it up against some of the things that the leaders in Waco were saying, or you butt it up against some of the FDLS people, the fundamentalist Mormons were saying, and the Jim Joneses of the world, and all these other people, there is a theme that happens with cults that participate in spiritual brainwashing and abuse. And I'm beginning to hear some of the similar things happening here. I want to welcome, hey, Sarisi, how are you, my dear? Good to see you. Hey, Jace, good to see you as well. And welcome everybody again that is on Instagram, that is on X, and that is on YouTube. Welcome you all. Thank you very much for joining us. When we see these things, when I see these things, then I begin to, my spidey senses go off. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And just because it's a duck that you're familiar with that's always come up to your house doesn't mean it's not a duck. Just because it's a rattlesnake that you see all the time and may come and you may get at you may tell the rattlesnake, hey, Mr. Rattlesnake, there's some squirrels over there, and we got some moles over there in the backyard, back yonder way, and I think I saw some mice or whatnot. Yo, you go feed. That don't mean that rattlesnake ain't still a rattlesnake. Okay, just because this rattlesnake might be brown and maybe another rattlesnake is black, they still the same rattlesnake. Just a different breed. They have a different color. They look a little different, but they're still a dang on rattlesnake that's still venomous. So what is my point? My point is there's a lot of cults out here that do a lot of stuff in the name of Jesus. There's a lot of spiritual abuse that happens in the name of Jesus. The reason why I'm playing this woman's thing, and we only got another minute or so to go with her stuff. But if any of y'all grew up in the church, you all will know that there's many verses in the Bible that talk about covering, that talk about love covering, that talk about the covering of that leaders should be given to their flock, that talk about covering that a Christian should be giving to another Christian. And I think just on a natural scale, just as a human being, just as a human mother and grandmother, just as a human being, I would not be out here putting my son out on Front Street like this. Especially not over some tomfoolery and effery that I done pulled. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this gives me great pause, because if you are truly a Christian leader, this is not what we do. We don't come out here and then say, I done had my boy on a performance improvement plan for 15 months. And that Ninja Turtle didn't do nothing to make sure that he was going to do right. So, now he going on a whole smear campaign when I done already told him that I'm the voice of the Lord. And the voice of the Lord told me that Uncle Pete didn't do nothing to this baby. So, how dare he question me? And that darn wife of his, as we about to find out, the darn wife of his, whoo, baby, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. This woman here, I don't have a lot to say about Jonathan and his wife. I'm gonna have to speak directly to Susie in a minute. Hey, Miss Anna, how are you, sweetheart? How are you? Anna says neither would I unless I'm covering up my own. And then let me tell you something else. If you gonna cover up your own, baby, don't get me started. Okay, here we go.
Everyone knows that we have dedicated our lives to spreading the love of Jesus, and to see it attacked by my son Jonathan and his wife is truly heartbreaking. I want to assure you that all the allegations that are circulating against myself and my late husband are completely false. We have already begun to take legal steps to defend ourselves, and we will address the accusations in a God-honoring way. We stand firm in our faith, knowing that God is with us, and his purpose for Daystar is far greater than any present challenge we may be facing. While this attack is very painful and wrong, I know that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against a spiritual enemy who seeks to destroy and divide no matter what the cost. I want to ask you for your prayers. Thank you for your continued love and support. Our team here at Daystar will keep you updated. Again, thank you for your prayers. God bless you.
Now, I don't know what God she praying to. I don't know what God she think got her back. I don't know what God she think has sanctified the tomfoolery, effery, and disgusting cover up and behavior of her. I'm not even going to put it necessarily on her husband. And I'm going to show you why. Now, once again, I just want to make us everything as you see down here, everything by me stated is my opinion. If I do decide if we do have a panel, I'll bring the guests on the panel is their opinion, and any criminal or scandalous acts are alleged until they are proven in a court of law, which hopefully that will begin to happen very soon. We'll find out one way or the other. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what my definition of spiritual abuse is as we're going to go next. We're going to look at Jonathan and Susie's statement that they put out about 3 days ago. And that link is down there below in the description box as well. Spiritual abuse for my definition is abuse where you take your position and or in conjunction with the word of God, and then you fashion it so that you can control another party mentally, emotionally, and in a lot of cases end up controlling them physically. What do I mean by that? When there's a difference in me standing up in front of a church, a congregation, a gathering of people, no matter if it was, 10 or 10,000, because I've done it in both ways. I've done both. And I've stood in front of thousands and given a word of God. I've given a thus saith the Lord. I've given a channeled message. And at the time, the verbiage that I used was, I hear from the Lord. I hear from heaven. I hear from the angels. I hear from. Okay. And the word of the Lord says, okay, that is a different situation. And sometimes I would give this message in tongues and someone would be there to interpret. That is a different situation. From where we we are in a situation where we have where I'm going to come to you and saying I'm the voice of the Lord, um and I am the and because I'm the voice of the Lord, you cannot hear um from anybody else but me. um and if you hear anything, um if you hear anything else, or you have to very well, I'm sorry, I just got an email from someone, um and I'm not sure why they felt they could do it at this moment in time, but anyway, sorry. Unless you hear this directly from me and whatnot, then it's not valid, right? It's not valid. And you must submit to me because I am the voice of the Lord. You're not able to hear from the Lord on your own or anything like that. I That is spiritual abuse. When you're told, when you question whether or not something is biblically correct, or you say, I don't feel that this is biblically correct for me, right? According to my feeling on things, according to how I interpret the word, and we're not even allowed to have a discussion. And then you try to force me to then come out publicly and go along with however it is you wish to go along. That's not, I what am I supposed to do with that? Like, you don't get to do that. You don't get to beat me into submission. You don't get to spiritual abuse is when, there's something that's going on, and rather than being honest about an investigation or taking a hard look at it, you just come and you say, oh, well, God exonerated them and that's okay. Spiritual abuse is saying, if you uh if you're doing the work of the Lord is satisfying me in some fashion, right? It's satisfying me. This is where we get into different essay situations, right? That's spiritual abuse. We cannot sit here and say that everybody is capable and able to hear from the Lord, and we should all have our own individual relationships, and yet we want to beat people into submission because they don't agree with us. That's spiritual abuse. Saying, oh, give this money, give this money, give this money. The Lord says, 10 of you are gonna have $1,000 to give. And I've seen that in poor churches and strong churches. And like on TV, I mean. I've seen that in the neighborhood and I've seen it on national television. As if God is some sort of slot machine, you know, as if God is some sort of slot machine. So that in and of itself, and anytime that a minister wants to get something from you and some sort of behavior from you in some way via, and they use, this is a God thing, I'm the voice of God, and they use that as the methodology for doing so, doesn't fly. Doesn't fly. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we are going to look at how this occurred with Jonathan and Suzy Lamb. All right. We're going to watch that now. Let me also go here. I can't stand fake crying and crocodile tears. God is an extension of man's ego. No one knows what God is. For all we know, is the force we call God could be a tiny star. I mean, that's true. It's how you wish to, how the Creator has then related themselves and shown themselves to you, right? Gene Phillips says that, Jesus is real. I had minuscule faith before I met the angel of the Lord. Jesus is real. Jesus is real for you. I'm not saying Jesus didn't exist. And the expression of God, and I'm not, again, I am not saying anything against anybody's religious beliefs. Your spirituality is your spirituality. Okay? I have a problem when it's abused. And I've seen it abused way too much time. Have nothing to do with the fruitfulness of and we're exposing all of it. It is shameful to even mention what is disobedient do in secret. It is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret. I agree that we should expose them. The problem is that too often people don't want it exposed. Right. Yeah, she's just making a statement about how we don't really know how God really is formed, right? We just don't know. Okay. Here we go. And let's go here. We rewind it. Okay, stop. And here we go. Now, this is answering some questions, Jonathan and Suzy Lamb. This is from just a few days ago, 3 days ago. I'm going to speed this up as well. Okay, this is at 1.25. It's 28 minutes. I'm going to speed up to 1.5. If this is too fast, guys, let me know. Okay.
I wanted to take a moment and first thank everyone for your incredible support. Obviously, we've had something come to the surface that's been hidden to a very small select group of people, something that we've been walking with for several years now. And to have it just fully come out, to have the truth out there, it's really been freeing in a lot of ways because we don't have to have something that we're hiding. It's out in the open.
Yes, that's true. But also I would add that since this is such a absolutely deeply traumatic thing that we've gone through, obviously us sitting here can never fully express what we've walked through in these past few years. I mean, I don't even want to get into the process of what that looked like, but it was excruciatingly painful. So yes, there is that freedom in not having to depend on a few people and keep begging for justice and having it minimized and turned down and, just hitting a wall like a dead end. There's peace and satisfaction now. When the story came out and the way people received it, and I felt like the floodgates of justice opened on us when everyone validated what we as parents felt. We really wanted to do a short video. This is not the time or place that we want to get into our whole story. Jonathan and I just quickly grabbed the camera, sat down here to address a few questions. We will be doing some podcasts with amazing people and get into the nitty-gritty and the deep things. We told a few journalists our story, and then they have full control of what we've given them. We have no control. We told the truth. They do the investigation. That takes months. It takes a long time. So this is not something that just started now. This has been building. I'm proud of them for doing their due diligence. Yeah. And so I thought the reason I suggested we do this video is because I didn't realize how much it would blow up. Jonathan had kind of an idea. I genuinely didn't. And since we've been on TV so much and people have loved us so genuinely, I felt it was cruel to not answer a few questions that people who genuinely love us want these answers to.
All right, so these are 4 of the most common questions that we've got over the last few days. One is, why didn't we go to the police? And why did it take so long to talk? 2, why did I not put my hands on this man? And 3, why did Susie scream for me to go up versus her just going up herself? And 4, why are we not going public?
Yeah.
All right. This is very important because if you remember yesterday, we discussed the whole Royce report article that detailed the 5-year-old daughter. Like they were at, they had a rented home, and it was in Miramar, Florida, I believe. And the 5-year-old is sent up by Susie, the 5-year-old daughter sent up. She was then 5 at the time. This is in 2021 summer. So it's the summer before Marcus Lamb passes suddenly of COVID, or complications. She sends her up to go get changed into her swimsuit. This relative, Pete, goes up the stairs. Susie sees this happen. There has already been allegations prior that something has occurred at least once, potentially twice, with their daughter. The daughter comes to the mom. Anyway, Susie screams for her husband. Her husband, Jonathan, goes up to the room, finds Pete, that's what they're calling him, in the room with the 5-year-old while she's absolutely unclothed, and he begins to profusely apologize. And they're going to retell that story again here. For me, at first, when I looked at this, I thought he got fired as a result of that and him saying something about it. Then we find out that that's not why he got fired. He got fired because he wouldn't go along with his mother's remarriage, and there's a whole scandal about that to Dr. Doug Weiss. But what I want you to hear is what happens as a result of this situation and how they were manipulated and abused into this just now coming out because they gave all of this information over to reporters and said, you guys do your own independent investigation. And that information is what came out in November, as well as this situation with the marriage, which we'll get into later.
So let's unpack the first question. Why didn't we go to the police? Well, we did go to the police, actually twice.
I think to answer the second question, why did you wait so long to talk? I would say let's go through the timeline, because I understand in an article, there's a bit of back and forth because it's so complex. So we'll just go in a streamline. We're going to do a super concise version because this is going to be a short video. It'll all keep coming out. We have a little bit of notes here for just the main highlights. So let's pick up from where it all began. I would start with in the summer of 2020. Actually, in early spring 2020, my sister noticed my daughter's behavior being strange, stiffening up when people came close. And I started to notice that too, but I didn't take it very seriously. I thought just part of growing. And then by that summer, on a trip, we're going to be a little careful with our words here. We have to be on a trip. This man says that our daughter walked in on him in a bathroom, saw him full frontal nude. At this point, this is also new to me. I didn't really know what to do with it. I just said okay. Since he told me, I just said okay, and I went and checked on my child. She seemed fine, so I was like, okay. I don't know if I even told you or not that day. Then as the months start to progress, she starts to get her behavior is changing. November of 2020, she tells me in very graphic detail that she had been molested. It was the shock of my life. I can't even explain the things that I felt. In that moment, I went to my confidant, the person I really, truly, with my whole heart trusted. That was another question. Why did you go there? It was about 5:30 in the evening. Jonathan hadn't come home from work, and I was ready to get in the car and go to the police. But this woman I really trusted said, no, we're going to talk to the teachers. When I talked to my child that day, when she told me.
This woman is my mom. You can just say the name.
It's still hard. It is still hard. It's easy to.
So I want you to see this. This is the daughter-in-law now. This is November of 2020. So this is months before the incident that I just described. November of 2020. So prior to that, a few months prior to that, Pete comes in and says, oh, she walked in on me while I was going to the bathroom. I mean, I guess a lot of us had 5-year-olds around. By that point, usually they know to knock first. Maybe. Okay. I mean, I guess I'm not going to think that much about it. And at that point, she was okay. Now, a few months later, she comes to mommy in November and tells this graphically detailed story. Okay. She tells the story in graphic detail. And her first reaction, she tells her mother-in-law, I guess I understand that, like not knowing, like I'm not sure I would immediately call the police, I guess. My husband hasn't got home. I'm going to call my mother-in-law because up until this point, she's been a close confidant. We've had a good relationship. She's supposed to be a woman of God. And she's going to tell you why we didn't think it was the relative. Here we go.
To talk to a journalist as a one-on-one person, but going public, it genuinely hurts. These are people that we love. These are not people we're angry at or hate. Okay, sorry. I'm trying not to get emotional. So I asked my child. I have no practice with this. I don't know what leading questions are or not. I assumed it was a school. Her world was so small. Home, school, and we'd take her to Daystar. So I assumed it was a school. I asked her, is it at school? She was nervous and just nodding. I found out since, counselors have explained that behavior to me now, and it all adds up. It all makes sense. And I said, was it a girl or a boy? She said a boy. And I said, how tall? Trying to gauge the age. And she said, taller than daddy. That struck fear in my heart because Dad is a man. A 5-year-old doesn't, know to communicate that. Okay, picking up the pace. Once that happens, we go to the school, and this confidant, the one I trusted, after we talked to the teachers and they said there's no mail here, it's almost like, okay, we've done our part, case closed. And I told Jonathan, I don't want to get talked out of this. I don't want to have a discussion with your family. Let's go to the police. We went to the police, filed our report. They did a quick little investigation since there was not much to go.
I found it interesting when I watched this the first couple of times. She tells her husband, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to get talked out of this by your family. We're going to the police. Remember what she said. The child's world was very small. School, home, Daystar. We've ruled out the school. There's no men that work there. We've ruled out home because it's a person taller than daddy. All we have left is Daystar. And that's why she didn't want to get talked out of it, because she knew what was going to happen. Michelle, honestly, I don't lock bathroom doors. I don't lock the bathroom door. I never have. And we've had little kids running around all the time. I don't think any of us have. So if that happened that way, that really didn't necessarily shock me. Okay, here we go.
Go on. They closed the case pretty quickly because our daughter was terrified. She wouldn't talk anymore.
At the school, so
a lot of things.
Now, remember in the article, though, it said that before the police actually got a chance to chat with the child, grandma had already talked to the child and shut the child down.
Small things happen from talking to people, processing, other family members reaching out with concerns. Things happen. We're more vigilant over our child. We get a nanny in the picture to keep her away. She's terrified to go to Daystar. We do, however, go on that family vacation in August of 2021. And this is a big one. This would answer the question of, I guess the first question is, when you walked up that day, why did you not put your hands on the man?
Well, I mean, when I walked up there and I saw Pete up there with my daughter, I was horrified. The first thing I started doing was screaming, what are you doing? Like, obviously, since his hands weren't on my daughter, he wasn't in the act. He was just in the room with her. I wasn't at that time about to put hands on him or beat him up, but obviously I was horrified and I was just shouting him down, and that led to him multiple times, probably 50 times, saying, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. So again, it felt like I caught him red-handed and doing something that he shouldn't have done. And as evidenced by the fact that Susie saw him follow up my daughter after she had told her to change into her swimsuit.
Well,
so there's intent.
I'll add this. To complete your answer, first, if that man's hands were on our child's body, that man would have been leaving that house in handcuffs. The police would have been called. When I saw Jonathan, because Jonathan and this man, they came down the stairs from our children's room. I guess Jonathan made him come downstairs. When I saw Jonathan, we've been married at that point, how many years? 10 years?
10 years.
I had never in my 10 years ever seen Jonathan look like this. It was honestly terrifying. His eyes were bloody red. His face was blood red. He was screaming so aggressively. And that man, who is, taller than Jonathan and much more smooth, he was shaking like a leaf. Part of my anger, which I've expressed to other journalists, is that man was so vulnerable. I felt like he was
on the verge of confessing.
If he had not been protected, he couldn't speak up for himself. I'm going to leave that there. It seemed that way to me. That's how it seemed to me, until the situation was taken control of. So then comes the part about, why did I scream for Jonathan? I screamed for Jonathan because I have a very long history of being extremely compliant and obedient and submissive. And this is not me saying nice things about myself. I don't know if it's even a nice thing. It is just the facts of, I always brought up multiple times and multiple witnesses of my concerns, frustrations, boundaries with my children. I was not allowed on our own children's photo shoots, the Christmas photos that were shown on the TV shows. I wasn't allowed on those. I had to just trust me. The statement, trust me. I had to trust my mother-in-law. I had to trust, that she would take care of them. And I had to do this in service to God. I had to obey and trust. And
there you have it. In service to God, obey and trust. I'm going to rewind a little bit, though. Can we go back? People's question was and is, why didn't you put hands on that man? Put a 1 in the chat if you caught a grown man in the room with your child or your grandchild or your nephew or your niece, if you would put hands on that person, no matter if they was touching them or not. You already, now remind you, you already have had to remove your child from going to Daystar, the family business, because you already know that it's got to be somebody. I have a feeling they already knew that it was this man. Because otherwise, why would she have such a visceral reaction to him going up the stairs if they didn't already know? So they already knew. You already knew, sir. Now, Jonathan does not seem like a violent person. He does not seem like a violent person at all. So I imagine it would take a lot for him to become violent. But I'd have a hard time. But I also believe, as this is beginning to unfold, that Mary is right. There are so many layers to this. If you have been taught all of your adult life, that you submit to your mother and father, you submit to the head of your church organization, you submit to this, submit and obey, smile and obey and trust. I hear from God, trust, and submit. And we've already begun to take care of this. We're going to follow the Bible. We're going to take another person and talk to them. And then with that, then we're going to go to the elders, bring them in front of the elders. And if the elders say that everything is cool and copacetic, then it's totally fine. Listen, that works when you don't have a police department with silver bracelets. We're not in olden times anymore. We're not in those times. We are in today times. And today times dictate that if this child is showcasing this type of behavior, then you have a duty to act. Not only that, but the church itself, and I don't care how uncomfortable this is, and this again is not just a Catholic thing. And y'all, we need to stop acting like it is, because the church itself has a long, sordid, disgusting history of covering up this type of behavior so that we can protect whomever. That level of protection could be the pastor, that could be the deacons, that could be this person, that person. It could be one of the biggest donors in the church, one of the biggest donors to the network, a beloved family member, a brother, or a close cousin. Hello, somebody? Some of y'all might remember I talk about not sacrificing your children at the altar of the church. It appears to me that's exactly what Joni and Marcus did. Joni for sure. I'm not sure about Marcus, but Joni for sure, as we got to unpack this. So this is a very layered situation. You have already been pre-programmed to submit, and you dare not. And then she's been pre-programmed to be a submissive wife and then submit to the matriarch of the family, which is her mother-in-law. But I'm going to tell you that there's nowhere in the Bible where it says that the wife got to submit to the mother-in-law. In fact, it says the husband should cleave unto the wife and leave their family. That's what the Bible says. Now, if we want to really go by the Bible, let's go by the Bible. Let's get it. Let's go. Let's go by the Bible. Let's not play games. My mother-in-law with my child. You don't know how to throw hands? You'd figure it out, Sister Michelle. I believe she was being manipulated by her brother. Absolutely. Her mother-in-law has abused her power, and that's going to be showcased even more so. Hey, Jace, hello again. Oh Lord, Observer 777. Welcome to the Daystar Network. Now let's all sing the Daystar theme song. Joni had a little scam, little scam, little scam. Joni had a little scam that now has been exposed. Oh my God. Disgusting. That's what Joni is. Here we go. She had to obey and trust. So here this woman wasn't allowed to really speak about what was going on with her own children. None of that. It was all Joni, right?
I'm not naive like I used to be. I was in my early 20s when I had my kids, and it was just programmed from then. You got to trust. You got to trust. Anytime I had any concerns, if I brought up anything that bothered me with my children, any kind of boundaries, I was shut down, scolded. These are traumatic memories. I'm not trying to be a victim. I am not a victim. I'm a very strong woman now, and God has taught me a lot. But this is the process. And that day, I just know. I know I'm not even that smart. I wouldn't have thought of this. In my gut, in my spirit, when I saw that man, I told my kid to go put on her swimsuit. I saw him turn and follow her up those stairs. And I just felt it in my gut, in my spirit, get Jonathan. They will not believe you. And that is the best thing that I could have ever done for my child. I wouldn't change one thing because
they will not believe you. Why is it they wouldn't believe her? I'm about tired of these people.
As if I had not, and Jonathan, what did you feel when I came to you?
Yeah, I remember I was brushing my teeth. So I just felt a quickening in my spirit to like run. And so
I remember your toothbrush fell.
I dropped the toothbrush and I ran. I sprinted up because it was on the 3rd floor and I was on the 1st floor. I had to sprint up the 2 flights of steps. And to my horror, I get up there. There's Pete.
Sorry, I'm a little shaky. This is really hard to talk about. Whew. So Jonathan, I screamed. It was the best thing that I could have done for my child. I truly believe that if I did not scream for Jonathan and Jonathan didn't have such an aggressive, big reaction, today they would not even be admitting that he had followed her out the room or he was in the room. That would not. They can't deny it now because of this. And I know that gut instinct, that feeling, I'm thankful.
Absolutely.
Normally, am I a mama bear? Oh, you don't even know. I have gotten into so many fights. I have been beaten down and pushed into submission for being a mama bear. And I thank God with all my heart that the day came when he said enough is enough is enough. Whew, that was an intense one. Okay.
And a few days later, my father calls me and my brother-in-law into his office. He tells us that Pete has been cleared by this forensic examiner and that we need to submit and move forward.
Yeah, and all we ever knew in our lives, all we had ever done is obey and submit. We had never questioned.
Yeah.
And
so
even though I had big, strong doubts, I was angry. I'm not going to just lie and say that, I moved on. No, it was a big struggle. But the way that we were trained, God is our witness, Jonathan and I, you are going to be the future leaders. You have to take the lower road. You have to bring family unity. You have to do what it takes to be the bigger person. Go golf with him. You go have coffee, apologize to her. Do whatever it takes to be friendly and loving. That is the character of Christ. And we did it with all our hearts. We didn't perform.
So he had to go play golf with this man. And then they had to go apologize to the wife and all of this because of these accusations. Mind you, what I have now found out is I think when we were reading that yesterday, it was this Debbie, I can't remember her last name. I'll find it in the article. What we have now found out, and I think they're going to tell you a little bit, is that this forensic, the supposed forensic examiner, the person that did the investigation, she never did it. She never completed it. They lied on this woman. They lied on her and said that she did. JB is the suspect not mentioned. All roads. Who is JB? Gene Phillips? I don't know. I didn't really follow Daystar. I was a TBN girl, and I knew a lot of ministers that were on TBN, so I wasn't a Daystar person. Joni and Marcus covered. Are you talking about their daughter's husband? No. 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 Oh, that's allegedly, y'all. That's a Hold on. Wait. Y'all not finna where am I allegedly at? Oh, I don't have an allegedly no more. I thought I had an allegedly. Oh, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Okay. Okay, we're gonna find out. I can't take this. How does this stop? I was at my play sister's house with my 5 and 1-year-old. Went to the store and got dinner, came back, and the uncle we'd put in jail 20 years before. I don't even understand. I don't even understand. We can't keep letting them in the house. We can't keep letting them around our kids. Haven't gone to cousin's family day for years. Neither husband like young girls. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You watch Mother Angelica. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, so I understand that this Gene Phillips is this Jonathan Brown, Rachel's husband. That's the theory. That's your theory. I haven't heard that theory yet. I'm just going to question it though, because my understanding from what I've been able to piece together from some of these other videos is that it's that this Pete person is one of the founding family members, like one of the founders, like founding members of Daystar. So I'm not saying it can't be. I'm just saying I don't know. She said that's their cousin. Hey, James, are you talking about your situation or? Oh, okay, guys, here we go. We got to keep. Anyway, so again, here we are. Trust and obey, and follow boundaries. You have to be the bigger person. You have to, operate with the love of Christ. What about this person? What about this person? He just got fired from Gateway. Gateway Church. Y'all are giving me tea. Now I'm really gonna be down the rabbit hole.
We weren't fake about it. We truly did it with all our
hearts.
Yeah,
I mean, it was very difficult, obviously, to move forward after that. So I had legitimate concerns, but at the end of the day, I trusted that my dad had actually gone through the process of clearing Pete with this examiner.
Yeah.
And we moved forward. We still had a very strained relationship.
Oh, we had boundaries with our house. I went to Daystar one afternoon to grab something from the cafe. There was something in the green room, and I had my child with me, and I knew she was scared at this point, so we didn't take her there anymore. We had a nanny at home with her. But this one time, I wanted to pick up something really quick. I go in there. It's in the afternoon. I didn't think anyone would be in the green room. And I take her with me, and it's horrible. I go to grab that box of food, and in walks Pete and his spouse. And my child was so full of terror. Her body went completely limp, and she fell under the table hard. I grabbed her little body. I picked her up, and I ran into the car. And I remember telling other family members about it, the ones I trusted. And it was traumatic. I was like, I'm not bringing my child here. We didn't for a while. But these things were happening. So then we go into this strained part of this relationship. This was the first time in our lives that Jonathan and I weren't having a warm, close relationship with his parents. Before that, we were so tight. And this was very, very hard. I mean, we cried a lot, and it was really painful. We get a text saying, hey, your dad's really sick. Can you come help? And of course, I was like, of course, I'll come spend the night. I'll stay on the couch. He was not in the hospital at this point. So I go stay on the couch, taking care of him, helping him walk to the restroom, do whatever. Because we love our parents, and everything goes out of the window at that point. Our child is safe, away from the person we suspect, but we will serve our parents. And we began to do that. From there, the hospital begins. You were there all day long while I was home with the kids. I was there night shifts. I would alternate with another person. Joni was there all the time. But on the nights that I was there, I thank God with all my heart for those nights. I got to really, there was no offense, no anger. I got to love on him. It was a very slow and hard death, but got to rub his head because his head would get hot and my hands were always cold. So rub his head, and rub oil on his feet. And I don't know if I should even say this or not, but I had the honor of, after he passed in his body, most people left. It was you and me, and I had the honor to close his eyelids. Just very deeply things that cause trauma. I'd never seen anyone die before. So our child, everything happens with her. Then Marcus dies. And then we go into full gear of Jonathan becoming vice president.
And there's such a small timeline from the time these events happened with Pete and me confronting him in the beach house to the time my dad passes away.
Whew. Joni starts dating this man. Okay, I'll throw this in there. With all my heart, I wanted her more than anybody else to find love. I wanted her so badly to not be alone. I loved her. I wanted her to be happy. And then she starts talking to him. She says,
okay, now understand, August 2021 is when the incident happens at the beach house. November, I believe, of 2021, if I'm not mistaken, is when Marcus passes, somewhere around that point. Now we're going into the holidays. Now we're, in between this time, in between August and November, before he gets ill, Marcus gets ill. They're like, oh, we did this investigation. And what they didn't say here is that even at the beach house, or there was some declaration by Joni that said, God, I had a dream last night and God told me that Pete's innocent. And then Marcus says, well, okay, praise the Lord, and we're gone. Like, I don't, like, what? So now we fast forward to Marcus has passed away. She starts dating Dr. Doug Weiss, who shortly after Marcus Lamb passes away, magically and mysteriously gets divorced from his wife. Mr. Doug Weiss was married. And then Marcus Lamb passes away. And then Doug Weiss gets divorced. And there's a big brouhaha because these people have been taught that you can't get divorced unless it's because of adultery. And there are some evangelical Christian, I've heard them all over YouTube these last few couple, 3-4 days, and I'm shocked that they still think like this. But there are some people that literally today will say, you could be getting beat by your husband or your wife and you can't get divorced. That they're not sure. It has to be real bad, you know. And dare you not say emotional abuse, because you know that's just for snowflakes. You can't be. So there's some people that really literally just stick to like the letter here and not like the realities. Like we are not our husband's property. You don't get to just beat on us and think that that's okay. Like that's not. No, we get to divorce you. So anyway, there's this big question though, because of the timing and because he said he was being emotionally abused by his wife and yada, yada, skippy. And then there are people, I think the investigator, in fact, is one that said, you know, Joni really got all hot and bothered when this man said, you know, something kind of, you know, of a rather flirtatious, sensual nature. And I mean, she's a woman. I'm not saying the woman did. But I guess word on the curb was her and Marcus really had not been having an actual relationship, a marriage. It was more like a friendship and a partnership. I'm just saying. Pick on the cousin. Okay, Catherine, let me catch up. She stopped to come to the famous church in Jersey because they told my cousin she should stay with her husband. See, that's what I'm talking about. Then she confessed she felt he was grooming their daughter, which is why they divorced. There you go. Oh. Well, I know he has that. You know, there's different ways of getting a doctor. Hey, Red Violet. Well, in the spiritual realm, I'll just tell you, most of us that get doctorates in like metaphysics or things like that, they're not going to be accredited. So I don't know what his doctorate is in, if it's in something that could be from an accredited school or not. I know he said that Jesus died so we could have good sex. I don't think that's, you know, that's not how I was taught the good news of the gospel, that Jesus died so we could have good sex. I think they was having good sex in the Old Testament long before Jesus was around. So I'm just saying, I don't know. That's my comment. Dr. Lisa, Michelle says, Dr. Lisa, had a church woman tell me because I was not interested in the guys in her area that women were created. Yes, that's something that a lot of people will say, that we were created specifically. And if you read Genesis in a specific tonality and the way that it is interpreted in the King James Version, you'll still see that. I could see that. I mean, we were taught that, right? That because Adam was lonely, God put him to sleep, took a rib, fashioned Eve so that she could be a helpmeet to him. Now, do I believe that that's the reason why Eve was created? No. Do you know why I believe Eve was? Now, I'm not even going to go down the Dr. Billy Carson road. Y'all can go down that one, that pathway yourself. I believe Eve was created because a biological man cannot have a child. There could not be any procreation without a portal through which life to come. All right. Then that's just the truth. Thanks, Anna. Yes, everybody, please hit that like button. Let people know we're having this discussion tonight. Doug Weiss isn't a doctor because his school lost their accreditation. Again, I don't know anything about that. Again, I'm just saying, like, for myself, metaphysics and things like that. There are metaphysical schools are not accredited. So, you know, it is what it is. I've listened to it. Yeah, we're going to get to that, Gene. I've listened to that whole thing. But we're not there yet. Like, I'm just kind of unpacking and unraveling this story as I've unpacked and unraveled this. And I felt it was super important to hear this because they are explaining from their perspective this timeline of what's occurred and why it occurred. And we're going to talk about, too, whether or not what's really the most important thing here. You were not concerned about your grandbaby. You did not care about your grandchild. In my opinion, by what we're about, the rest of what we're here, we've already known most of the story, but we're going to hear the rest of the story. Here we go.
Trust me, we always trusted her. So we started to trust her until it was more October of 2022 when things started to change. We found out more details about divorce. We have Matthew 19. I started talking to pastors to get actual biblical counsel. So that's October 22 is when it started to get really, the tensions arose, panic attacks began, all sorts of things. And then from October, it's building until July of 2023 when I was fired because I stood on my convictions. Won't get into that at this point, but that's what happened. At that point, life got very difficult, complicated. Jonathan was trying to manage what to do.
No. Yeah, I mean, at that point, there became a giant rift in the family because Susie had just been fired and stripped away of her ability to do ministry on Daystar after many years. And I also was removed from television to where I could not be on and continue. So we're just suddenly abruptly off television. And I continue on.
While telling the world we were on a sabbatical, which was a lie. Yeah. We're not okay with that. We're not okay with lies.
So yeah, that was their way to cover, is that they would place me on a sabbatical. And so I continue on. I feel strongly from the Lord to continue in my role at Daystar. And I continue on. The board eventually gets to the point where they force me to sign an NDA to be able to stay in my position as vice president and on the board. And that's what you heard the clip of that was posted on YouTube. And I said, no, knowing what I know, I cannot sign an NDA. There had been so much spiritual abuse that we've gone through. There had been obviously questionable things going on with my daughter. But I said, no, I'm not going to sign the NDA.
And that was November 16th was that board meeting. And this is the crazy part. It was 2 days after Jonathan said no to the NDA. 2 days after, November 18th, we get the call, find out it was a cover-up. The people who supposedly did this investigation, both of them said, nope, it was shut down. We did no investigation.
So there were two people that were supposed to have done the investigation. They find out 2 days after he would not sign that NDA. And that NDA was then going to force him to not speak on any of the allegations or anything to do with his daughter, because it was not just him and Susie. None of the kids thought this was a good idea for her to get married to Dr. Doug Weiss. And this was causing a big issue in the church world because there's so many folks that have a very narrow perspective on when it's okay to divorce and all that kind of stuff. And then marrying somebody that has been divorced. She was free to marry because her husband had passed. He, to a lot of people, was not, because there had not been, quote unquote, like physical adultery in this case. And then they hadn't tried to work on it and whatnot and so on. And here you're the sex minister. So why you couldn't work it out. So there was a lot to do. And the kids, I don't think were upset about necessarily her getting married. It was just who and how fast. And, he just got divorced. And then now y'all getting like, this looks funky and looks foul. But when you paint yourself into this picture, into this corner, because you have presented yourself as this ultra holy, I am the voice of morality. I am the voice of Christianity. I am the voice of all that is good and right and righteous. I am the voice of the Lord, and I am proclaiming God's gospel, all throughout the world. So you must listen to me. I know, right? And I've been ordained to, and I just know all these things. And I'm not saying anyone hasn't been ordained, but I'm saying the danger in getting a spiritual ego and operating from that space and not being able to operate in a space of like truth and not being able to operate from the space of humility and not being in the and setting yourself up as God. This is a very dangerous place to be. Very dangerous place to be. They'll serve 3 to 5 max and back on the street. It happened in Florida. At least that one instance that they're talking about. And then the other instances I would imagine happened in Texas, where I think their other studios are. So neither Texas nor Florida is going to play about it. Florida don't play about their childrens, and neither do Texas. So they may have wished that it had happened in New York City. They do look very young, but they're well in their 30s. No, that the stranger dangers of Thanksgiving table. I mean, we do, but this is the other thing. In not even just Christianity, I'm picking on Christianity right now because I can tell you so many cover-ups have been done in the name of the church and in the name of Jesus. So many have been done. We can't tell that that's not the biblical way. We don't involve the police. Well, that sounds like Scientology. If you guys paid attention to the Danny Masterson case, those women, they detailed how Scientology will tell you don't get to go outside of Scientology and involve the police. You have to resolve it within Scientology. This happens so much in churches of all faiths, of all denominations. I'm just going to pick on the Abrahamic versions, okay? You can't go tell. And in a lot of families, you can't tell. We all kind of know Uncle so-and-so is a predator, but we don't dare talk about Uncle so-and-so being a predator. Why not? Why don't we talk about Uncle so-and-so being a predator? I don't understand. Why not? He's a predator. And we have to like somehow save what are we saving their reputation for? And then we get blamed as if or our girls get blamed, or you know what I'm saying? And it's sad that we have to do this, but I came up in an era where we were told we couldn't kiss nobody on the lips as a young girl. You didn't sit on no grown man's lap unless it was your daddy. And then after a certain age, you didn't even sit on your daddy's lap no more. Like, here we go.
Sends me honestly spiraling. I couldn't believe that level of deception and trauma. I mean, I had seen lies throughout, but this level, it was too much for my heart to even bear. I hit a downward spiral. I really did. And at that point, we knew we need to take action. So the best path of action forward was first find a counselor for our child. We went, found a counselor, told the counselor called CPS called the cops, and the detective called me back, reopened the case. Told him what happened on that vacation, all our concerns, and how we're worried about not only, yes, our child is out of danger at this point. We want justice for our child, but it doesn't matter whose child it is. Children must be protected. It's much bigger than just our story, because this person has influence and can be around other children. Now, I don't know if you've gone through counseling. It's not easy. Counseling can be extremely hard, digging into the places that your mind doesn't want to go, wants to protect you from. And it was really, really hard on our child. That process for a few months. Every time she went through a session, when she came home the rest of the day, no one could touch her. She was on guard. Her body started breaking out like it did before. It looked like shingles, but it was eczema. And I started to cry because I was just like, I cannot see my child suffer like this. And I spoke to an older counselor, someone else, who said, God has given our bodies this defense mechanism to protect us. Don't force it. Don't push it. When it comes out, it will come out in God's timing. You have to trust God. And so we talked to our counselors. Our counselor said, go on a trip, let her rest, let her be a child again. Meanwhile, we start getting followed. I know I'm going through this really fast, but there's a lot of details. We're being followed. I'm terrified to go to the grocery store. There's a man taking a picture of me. Outside our house, we see mysterious cars. It gets really bad, to the point, Jonathan, me, and our children, we just packed up, got in the car, and drove for days. And that's how we went to South Dakota.
And that's what we've clearly seen in this year 2024 is God is cleansing his bride. It says judgment begins in the house of the Lord. And he is exposing all this hidden sin and corruption and bringing it to the surface so we can do a new thing. And so this is part of that movement. God is using this exposure to cleanse his bride. And so we went to Julie Roy's back in August. And it wasn't up until November that she actually released the story. And now Daystar is doing their best from their PR machine to try to cover their bases. They're saying that I had a performance improvement plan that expired on November 15th. That's true. However, I was not coordinating a release of my story with the end of that plan. Far from that. We were ready to get our story out in August. That's when we went to Julie. However, she had a lot of other things on her plate.
Well, she had to do a deep investigation. This is the part that is important, I believe. Julie didn't just hear our story and feel bad for us and start writing. She dug, we gave her hours and hours of worth of recordings and meetings. She went through so much. She has done due diligence.
It's a very extensive story. There's a lot to it. We gave her a lot of information. I gave her over 12 hours of recordings.
Yeah.
So from between getting all the other things off of her plate to the time she began getting into it and doing the investigation, it was from August through November. Julie, it's her due diligence to contact Daystar and my mother and the family members to get their side of the story. So she contacts them on Friday, November 15th. And I was subsequently fired the following day on a Saturday, November 16th. Now, throughout my time at Daystar, no employee has ever been fired on a weekend. We just don't do that. We fire people typically at the end of the day. A lot of times it's on a Friday. So there's proper exit procedures. So this was clearly a retaliation from me talking to the media. They wanted to fire me immediately after that. This is the day after Julie reports her story.
And how did they do it? Who showed up at our door? This is why we left our house.
We made that video earlier. Said we were going to go into an undisclosed location. We did. And of course, Daystar security guard came to our front door in a bulletproof vest with a gun,
weapons,
and posted my termination letter on the door.
And it's the same man who stuck the tracker in his car.
Yeah, so that's, again, the Daystar.
Okay, so can we talk about this for a minute? Can we talk about the fact, let me go over here. Can we talk about the fact that they are being followed? There's a man from Daystar, they're calling it the Daystar Mafia, that put a tracker in Jonathan's vehicle. They had to leave their home and go to an undisclosed location so they could feel safe. And this woman has the audacity to come on in her white suit and say, "Oh, this pains me so much. I'm so pained. I love my family." You love your family of Benjamins. My opinion, it doesn't appear that you love your family. At least not this part of your family that's willing to protect and wants to protect his family, his child. Again, I'm going to go back to the verse where it says clearly that when a man gets married to a woman, it says, and I believe it says that for a reason, that he shall leave his mama and them and cleave unto his wife. This woman here is a godsend to that man. This woman here got some backbone. So this is why Joni and I'll try to drop the link to the whole entire recording of these meetings in the description as well. If I get a chance, we might go through that piece by piece or pick out some parts and go through that tomorrow. This is what's crazy. This is what's crazy. So they had trackers, they firearms, and all of this really came out. They will say, I think a lot of it did have to do with the fact that he would not, by now they've taken her off their show that they've had on Daystar called The Green Room, I think. He was still on the show. He refused to, and maybe it was her too. They both refused to read, positive feedback about the mama's marriage. There was comments, saying congratulations and so on, because they didn't believe it was godly. Listen, lady, you want to read positive comments, read it on your own show. But your children and your daughter-in-law, listen, they just like, listen, I just don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not going to come out here and infer. I'm going to cover you as I should. So I'm not going to come out here and publicly denounce your relationship, but I'm not also going to publicly come out here and support it. And this is when this Jimmy Alexander, I think his name is, he's some sort of a marriage counselor or whatnot. She brought him in, Joni did, and they strong-armed poor man here. And he said, "Well, she's the voice of God." Well, wait, I can hear like who? The voice of the devil. The other thing I want to, absolutely hidden sins, yeah. He really does appear to be terrified. When you were 13, when he was 13, went to church with my aunt, the pastor's brother got a woman pregnant. Yeah, it's always the women. Jimmy Evans, thank you very much. You can tell I've been out of the church world for so long, and I really done left this whole scene alone because it's just too much. But this is one thing I want to say too. You notice the first thing he reverts right back to is we're uncovering sin so that God can cleanse his bride and God can do a new thing. He reverts right back to the teaching and the programming. I don't know if y'all, listen, I'm 56 years old. I'm going to run out on my fingers and toes and each and every one of y'all that's listening across these interwebs before I tell you how many times I heard God doing a new thing. And you know why I'm saying that? Because it's my belief that if we continue to rely upon God doing the new thing rather than us doing the new thing, really the new thing is us finding our divinity, really us finding our empowerment, really us finding our relationship, our true relationship with God, with higher power, with creator, with mother, father, God, a true relationship rather than this watered down, I got to jump through all these hoops and I got to come hat in hand in order to have that relationship. This is where this is living fifth dimensionally. This is living spirit led. And that's the new thing because up until now, we've depended upon other people to give us that interpretation. But sweethearts, I have heard God doing a new thing so many times, it's not even funny. It's not even funny.
Daystar Mafia coming after us. And so we were at a safe location. Thankfully, we didn't have to deal with them.
We saw it on the camera.
But we saw it.
Okay, so here we are. Julie gets everything ready. Candy is a friend, a journalist who also wrote her article. She has a bigger, she's shared more things, and Julie is going in much more in-depth detail because she'll release recordings and evidence. Candy told our story. I met Candy months and months ago. I started talking to her, I think, in July, because all year from January of 2024, I had been begging God and waiting, or what are you going to do? Are they going to repent? It was a year of torture. Jonathan standing and going to the office every day was not just him holding on to a job. It was him in obedience, dying to self and going there while I was at home traumatized, shaking. What else are they going to do to threaten us? The final question of why are we going public?
I got it. I'm sorry. And then I won't stop this. We're almost done here. We've got 3-4 minutes. I think that statement is another showing of spiritual abuse. You going to the job where the abuser, the potential alleged abuser of your child is working, and your own mother that you now know covered up, or you have an inkling, you at least know she made you apologize, like you did something wrong. That has been a negative influence over this whole situation. You going to that place of employment because of dying to self? No. No, that's you placing yourself on the altar of Daystar so that your mother could continue to sacrifice you over and over again. And your child, and your wife, and your sanity, and your hearts, and your spirits. That was her harvesting that energy off of you. That's not that dying to self does not include torturing yourself or putting yourself in a position where your wife and your family still feel unsafe. Now that's my feeling on it. Y'all could feel however y'all want to. Y'all grown.
I think our answer explains why we had no other option. But I would say the baseline is it would have been much easier. We would have been okay to quietly walk away and keep our private lives private. Everywhere we went, people wouldn't look at us weird. And think about this, okay? Our child, this is the rest of her life. I would never share another victim stories. I know many other stories that I could tell, which would make our case stronger from the same ministry. Mm-hmm. But I will never, I don't care if it helps me or not, because justice comes from my God. I will never tell another person's victim story I was never going to tell my story, what happened with that chiropractor, especially because he has a daughter, and I met her and I loved her genuinely, and I never wanted her to see this.
Yeah.
But here we are.
We did the beautiful thing of standing in solidarity with our daughter.
I had no option. I couldn't put my child out there
Yeah.
while hiding. Just
Yeah.
had no option. But if it was up to me, I would never tell that story to anyone. So you can see the weight on our shoulders as parents to go and tell the world this about our child. It is something something I could only do with the full force and strength of God to do this. I tell you this before God. We have no unforgiveness, no anger, no agenda in our hearts. We want to see, as we obey God and we put our lives in the line, we have counted the cost. We put our family and our story out there for God to take these ashes and make it beautiful. In that same way, we want to tell you we love and we bless them. So we don't want anyone to attack them, but we do want accountability with all our hearts. Every leader, if you are on a platform, you should be bold enough to answer any questions and be cross-examined. If you can't do that, step back. You are not here to be a pastor or a leader and be a coward. Either you do the job with transparency and accountability, or don't. But that has to be a standard. So I encourage you all, ask questions. Don't be scared. Don't just submit and be scared, because we came out of that really controlling submission culture. And now I will always teach, submit. We submit to one another. God is our covering, and the written word of God. Sorry, I get a little passionate there, but I just really want to tell you, we love our family. We forgive them. We're not sitting here angry at all. We have joy and peace in our hearts. And now that the truth is out there in the world, we don't know what comes next. We just know that we have obeyed God. And as we have done to this point, we will go forward, and he will do what he does with our lives.
That's right. And the Lord has really led every step of the way, and we continue to trust him as he directs our path. So that's an encouragement I want to give to you, is let the Lord direct your path. Stay tuned. We'll probably do some more updates as the days go by, but we love you all. Thanks for watching.
Okay, let's talk. And then we're going to wrap this up. We've been around. This was their timeline, and it helped me to see and understand a lot better what they were going through. And I'm hoping that it has showcased people. It showcased to you just how sinister and insidious this whole submit, obey, the followings, the teachings, like that culture can be. And I'm not saying be disrespectful of people in leadership, but we should not be beholden to or forced to submit to or enslaved to anyone where we cannot defend ourselves and our families. And I appreciate Susie's position about not wanting to share any other victim's story, even her own child. I completely understand that, and I can honor that. There's also such a strength in her coming forward and there is no shame, right? There is no shame in telling your story. There's no shame in going to the authorities, to the police. There's no shame in getting justice. And we have to begin to recognize that operating, give unto Caesar, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, render unto God that which is God's. Because we're not walking around here with roaming judges and things of that nature, you need to go to the authorities. If you or one of your loved ones has experienced this at the hands of anyone, family, clergy, anyone, going to the authorities is the thing to do. And it's the scariest thing to do, but it's the necessary thing to do, because people, especially these people in these positions of spiritual power, really need to know that they can't continue to do this. Okay. It's interesting. I am gonna say, to me, this is what, and Gina, I appreciate your faith and your strength. What we are seeing, and I think maybe it's time for me to talk about this very soon here, we're seeing a separation right now of third dimensional life and frequencies and higher dimensional life and frequencies being separated on the earth at the same time. And so, yes, we will see more. We're not done tearing down structures that actually do not serve us and that have done more to harm us as a collective or they have turned out to do that than before. So there is a reckoning. Now, whether or not I feel that that reckoning is being handed down by an Abrahamic God, and when I say Abrahamic God, I mean all the Abrahamic religions, right? Which would include Judaism, Christianity, and Muslim. Or whether I believe it's a different that a creator entity that is gonna bring it forward in a different way. But truth and love and justice are going to be borne out, period. That's it. Truth, justice, that's it. And the people that are not doing right, that are morally corrupt, are going to get their just as well. Right? They're going to get their just as well. Now, there's more to this story. We're going to even talk about the marriage. We're going to talk about now all these people leaving. Like right now, we've got Daystar like sending large YouTubers cease and desists. It is getting messy and nasty. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep following this. I'm going to keep unraveling it. I'm going to keep looking deeper into this. And I also find it quite interesting that people are starting to notice that this is coming out at the same time. There are a number of other large following ministers. Like there's some scandal going on with Todd Bentley. And I didn't realize Todd Bentley was still doing this, that he was like kicking people to kick cancer out of them. I don't know where they got that mess from, but I could have sworn Todd Bentley also had some other types of improprieties. And so also, TD Jakes is huge on that platform. And so people are starting to notice like what is happening with these very large ministries. Anyway, guys, I'm going to get on off of here. I've been on here an hour and a half. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I do appreciate you. There are a couple of things down in the below, in the description box below. There's a link for if you are thinking about opening up your own business, coaching, transformational leadership, or you want to help the collective in some way or serve those of us who do. Join me December 6th through 8th for the Empowered Entrepreneur to launch your business in 3 days. It's through the 3daybiz.com. And then if you want to learn how to read the tarot like me and start your own tarot business, if you follow that link to my Shopify Lightworkers Emporium, you will get my first 2 published books right there, and you can get started for just $33. All right, gang, we are going to get on out of here. Peace, love, blessings, and joy be unto you today, tomorrow, and for all eternity. I love you guys so much. Namaste. Bye.